Okay. So I've clicked record. Is yours still recording, Tracy? We can go back and edit this out. Okay, perfect. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and let folks in and just admitting everyone, but but right now I think we just have some of our presenters or speakers in here. I was telling Jen earlier that just if you're not talking or presenting, to keep your camera off. But once y'all are ready to present, then just turn your camera on, okay? All right, I'm letting
Sounds good, Martin.
Awesome. Well, letting everybody in now. And Matt and Tracy, if y'all can take over with helping me admit people in as they come in, that would be great.
Sure, I'll take over admitting people.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, Martin.
Good morning. Well, we are going to jump right into things because we have a lot of information to cover in the next 2 hours, and I do want to give a short 5-minute break in the middle of this for folks to, do what you need to do in those 5 minutes. And just a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to kind of just plow through the presentation. So if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat. And Matt Luther and Tracy Branch are helping out, so they might answer the questions. If not, then if we have time at the end, then I'll look at the questions and try to answer them for folks. Just a heads up that this presentation is being recorded, so if you missed something or want to go back and rewatch something, then you'll be able to view this again. It will be put up onto our Employment Services and Special Programs website. So don't feel like, this is the only time you'll get this information. You'll get the PowerPoint and you will get the recording. Also, just to make things a little easier for folks that are trying to watch the interpreter and the speaker, please keep your camera off. And for those folks who are presenting for a portion of today, then once you're presenting, please turn your cameras on because that helps individuals that need to see you while you're speaking. So that is all the housekeeping I can think of at the moment, unless Tracy or Matt, y'all have anything else that I might have missed. Okay. So I am going to get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Martin Kurielowski. I am the Transition and Education Services Coordinator for Virginia's Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services. I am located in our central office in Richmond, Virginia, and I provide support along with my transition support team, which right now is Matt and Tracy. We support the field with implementing Pre-ETS, our pre-employment transition services, as well as other transition services and programs. So today we're going to be talking about our Pre-Employment Transition Services Summer Work Experience program. And we're going to look at what are these services, and then in the second half of the presentation, we're going to dive more into how we authorize and pay for these services, including some of the required reports and documents that need to come along with these services. In today's training, we've invited pretty much all of our DARS staff who are involved in work experiences, including our counselors, business development team, our placement counselors, folks who do authorizations, as well as our providers. That includes administrative staff for our pre-ETS vendors that do this service, and the skills trainers and the folks that actually do that support with our consumers. So we have a lot of folks here today, so it is helpful if you're not presenting to kind of make sure you're muted and the camera is off. Just helps everyone out to be able to focus on the presentation. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to jump in. So this entire program for summer work experiences is grounded in our pre-employment transition services program. So we have to understand that what pre-ETS is and who it's for and the intention of this program. So our pre-ETS are for students with disabilities. So a student with a disability, like you see up on the screen, is someone who's 14 all the way up to potentially 22 years old, who is enrolled in a secondary, post-secondary, or other recognized education program and has a documented disability. So that could be individuals who have IEP, an individualized education plan, 504 accommodation, or are 504 eligible, meaning that they have a disability, but they don't request or require any accommodations or services in school. So anybody that is an out-of-school youth or adult is not the population that we're talking about for this service. And for students with disabilities who fit that category, we have two sets of services that they can receive potentially while they're in school. Of course, pre-employment transition services, which I'll describe in a moment. That's one set of services that our program offers. These services do not require an eligibility determination. So you might hear people say the term potentially eligible. Potentially eligible is a category of students who have not applied and become eligible for the VR program, who are just receiving pre-ETS. So when somebody is potentially eligible, they only receive pre-ETS. They can't receive any of what we call our VR or vocational rehabilitation services. To access pre-ETS is pretty quick and easy if they are going to be potentially eligible. All we need is a pre-ETS information release and consent form and some documentation like an IEP or 504 accommodation to verify that they are a student with a disability. Now, the vocational rehabilitation services are services that a student could receive, but only if they are found eligible for the VR program and have gone through that eligibility determination. So once they are eligible, they'll develop an individualized plan for employment, and they can receive both pre-ETS and VR services as long as they are a student with a disability who's eligible. So VR services are things like assistive technology, benefits planning and counseling, things like that are VR services and are outside the scope of pre-ETS. Pre-ETS are never any cost for our participants, so our students and their families do not have to pay anything for pre-ETS. Which is different from VR services. Sometimes VR services might have a cost associated with them for a participant, depending on their financial situation. So that's a difference there. And the goal of pre-ETS is really to encourage and support career exploration, helping kids to get a greater awareness of the world of work. What are those opportunities that they might be interested in? But it's also to help them with developing skills so they are prepared for that day that they graduate and move on to the next thing after high school. We plan these services in coordination with our local school divisions so that the services enhance, complement, and fill gaps in what they offer to students in their schools. And like everything, we're hoping that we're empowering students to pursue their employment and independence potential so that they're reaching their potential and not settling for just what's easiest or lowered expectations. We're trying to raise expectations through pre-ETS. So what are pre-ETS? These services, there's 5 categories of services, and those 5 categories are up on the screen. Job exploration counseling is helping students to learn about different career pathways and make a connection between their strengths and interests and what those different career options are that might be a good fit for them. Today, we're talking about a program that's really under the umbrella of work-based learning. Work-based learning is helping students to explore the world of work through actual experiences with businesses, employers, industry professionals, that helps them to practice and improve their workplace skills, but also explore those different career pathways. Counseling on post-secondary education and training helps them to have a better awareness of education and training opportunities in the career pathways that they're interested in, and helps them to better prepare for post-secondary education, in particular, knowing how to request financial aid, knowing what accommodations are available and how to get them at that post-secondary level. Work readiness training is learning about job seeking, job keeping, and other work readiness skills, including independent living skills. So that's a pretty big category of pre-ETS and very important. They learn how to complete resumes, do job interviews, but also some of those skills that employers are expecting for any employee. Instruction and self-advocacy is helping individuals to have more self-determination, to know how to set goals for themselves, how to make decisions on their own, but also how to communicate their needs and their strengths to others, including understanding their rights and responsibilities as it relates to their disability. So understanding ADA and the Americans with Disabilities Act and other legislation out there that's designed to support them with their disability, their journey towards employment. So again, today we're talking about the Summer Work Experience program, which is a type of work-based learning. It's a service under work-based learning, which is more broadly designed to help those students explore career pathways in actual business settings with real industry professionals. And so what is a work experience? We're going to be talking about work experiences a lot today. A work experience is pretty specific. It is a 3 to 8 week opportunity for a student to experience authentic work in a single place of business. So it's 3 to 8 weeks long. It's in a single business. These opportunities are sometimes they're paid, sometimes they're unpaid. They can occur individually or in groups. So we might have a group of 2 or more students participating in the same work experience. Sometimes they need a skills trainer there to support them with that work experience, and sometimes they don't. So if they're a more independent student or it's just a more supportive employer, we might not need a skills trainer. Our work experiences are expected to be in actual opportunities that are in the community. So sometimes we don't allow work experiences at sites where an employment service organization does contracted work. Although it can be an ESO's place of business, we do have examples where an employment service organization has, say, like an accounting department, and a student is interested in accounting, and so they do their work experience in the accounting department at the ESO. But if it's contracted work, say someone's paying the ESO to do some administrative work, then that's not an opportunity that we can support through the work experiences. Work experiences can happen at any time, not just the summer. So I want to make very clear that we could be doing these year round. But during the summer, of course, is a time where we're able to access students a little bit more, and is an obvious time to do more of these opportunities. So why are work experiences important? There is research that shows that students with disabilities who participate in a work experience, especially a paid work experience while they are in school, have more success when it comes to those post-school outcomes in employment and post-secondary education. There's also a positive correlation, although it's not as strong, but positive correlation with independent living outcomes. So I want to share just a little bit about last summer and some of our outcomes from last summer, so that we have an idea of, kind of the volume and what we did. And moving forward, maybe these are things that we can meet or exceed this upcoming summer. That's always the goal for Pre-ETS, is to try to reach more and more students. So last summer, we supported 450 students in paid and unpaid work experiences across the Commonwealth. They did have an average age of about 18, which is a little high. We'd like to maybe be reaching the students a little earlier, but a lot of our students might be going to post-high school programs, and that might be a reason why they're a little bit older, is that they stay past the age of 18, enrolled in their local high school system. So we spent over $1.8 million in services last summer across 13 different Pre-ETS vendors, and $475,000 of that was student income that we reimbursed. So it might not be all the income students earned if they were paid by an employer directly, but that's how much we reimbursed vendors who were able to pay students as a service. We increased Pre-ETS vendor coverage from 2021 to 2022. So we added more Pre-ETS vendors in different areas where we needed them. I don't think anybody would say we have enough vendors and enough capacity yet, but we are moving in a positive direction overall. We also expanded our options for paying students, so we had more vendors sign up to do that service, which is really great and definitely incentivizes students participating. Last but not least, a lot of students obtained permanent employment. I wish I had numbers. It's hard for me to look that up, but just anecdotally, I've heard of a lot of students getting hired at the end of their work experience. So I'm just making sure I got the right slide. Okay. So again, we had 13 vendors, and they're all doing amazing work, and just showing kind of a summary of our vendors and their activity last summer. So you can see, and they have different coverage areas, and so some are covering more areas and might have more referrals of students, but just so you can see some of their activity, and just want to give a huge shout out and a lot of appreciation for all of our vendors who are supporting our work experiences, because in a lot of cases they're doing it on top of doing supported employment and other services for us. So just really want to say thank you. And then a summary of our field offices and some of their activity. Again, we can't do these without the coordination and the efforts of our field office staff. And some field offices are smaller than others in terms of coverage area or the number of clients they have. So we don't expect these numbers to all be high, but just want to show some appreciation for all of our field offices that are working to get students into these experiences, because we know how impactful and meaningful they are for our students. And just looking at the breakdown we have 6 districts at DARS. So these are districts that have, usually like 5 or 6 field offices in them. And these are the number of work experiences or students in work experiences that participated last summer. New River District, just a huge shout out to you guys. I don't know what we're putting in the water there, but y'all are really referring a lot of students for the summer work experiences, and that's great. But everyone is doing a great job supporting and promoting these opportunities for our students. So big thank you to all of our districts, which again, some are different sizes, have a different number of students. So it's not comparing apples to apples in a lot of cases, but just wanted to show this breakdown. And again, I love giving shout outs and some recognition. Some of our counselors, just looking at the data that I can see, we have some counselors that were very active, and I just wanted to show folks that kind of reached this 10 student milestone last summer. And so a huge shout out to these counselors who were very active in getting students into work experiences, because it's a lot of coordination to do this. But I also know that there's a lot of counselors who would be over 10 students, but we just had some capacity issues or something happened where someone dropped out. So I appreciate everybody's efforts to get these students into these opportunities. Moving on from kind of looking at some of the data and shouting people out, we always do a little bit of debrief and feedback after the summer to talk about kind of what worked, what didn't work, and try to identify some best practices and room for improvement in these services. So it kind of doesn't change much from year to year, especially since the pandemic, but some of the common issues that were noted were things like vendor capacity issues. So just not having enough staff to do these services and serve all the students that are interested in having a work experience. But that's kind of a universal problem and something that has been a talk of the town in the last couple of years, especially since COVID. It's been difficult having staffing capacity at our vendors. We talked about a little bit of late or short notice requests for work experiences, which is, kind of happens as we find out a little bit later in the summer that someone wants to participate in a work experience. And we'll talk a little bit later about kind of the best practice of starting that planning earlier, which is why we have this training when we do in the beginning of March, is to start that planning earlier so that we can avoid any late or short notice requests for work experiences. And then last but not least, transportation issues is always a huge barrier, especially in areas where there's not as many options for public transportation or accessible transportation for our participants. Just some successful practices or best practices that have been identified by providers and by our staff. Obviously, having regular communication and clear expectations with both the provider, but also the student and their family and employers. So that's probably universal for all services and not just work experiences. Like I said before, the earlier that we begin planning and making referrals, the better. Um, so it gives us more opportunity to really individualize the work experiences for our participants, and make sure that students and families are aware of their expectations. Uh, Doing shorter work-based learning activities prior to the summer work experiences is a best practice. So for individuals who are able to participate in things like a work site tour, job shadow experience or opportunity, that can actually, while it helps because it gets the students connected with a vendor or with DARS sooner, and then it also can help with an employer. Maybe they might do a worksite tour or job shadow event for us, and then they say, hey, I'd love to do a work experience for someone over the summer. We had that happen in Lynchburg recently, a wonderful job shadow event with Sam's Club. The employer was so excited from that and actually told one of our vendors who was supporting that experience that they would be for sure on board to do a work experience. So it just helps to have a little bit more of a seamless transition from the school year to those work experiences. Doing vendor presentations on their services. So as a vendor, if you can, uh, work with your DARS office just to share your availability, the services you provide, your capacity to provide the services, then that helps because we always have new staff, or we just kind of don't know what your capacity is, the services you can provide sometimes. So doing presentations on your services can help to kind of strengthen that connection and awareness. Um, Having experienced counselors mentor newer counselors on kind of the process. And we'll have a couple of counselors on today to share about their experiences, coordinating work experiences. So we hope that's helpful for any newer counselors on this training. Um, Having DARS find a work experience opportunity, and then referring to a vendor is a good practice. So if we're able to just line things up so that all we need is a skills trainer to support someone, that can save some time and legwork on the front end. Students receiving those payments, like I said earlier, we made a lot of student payments last summer, and that definitely helps to get students interested in doing a work experience, but it's also a learning experience for them as they fill out a timesheet and get to manage that income. Partnering with schools to develop work sites, doing disability awareness training for businesses. We offer a windmills training, which our business development team, I think a lot of our staff in our offices can do that training, but it's just a way to offer something to a business, uh, maybe as a token of appreciation or gratitude for them supporting a work experience, or as a way to maybe open them up to the idea of supporting a work experience. And then combining students with similar interests at a single site. And we have an example of that a little bit later. So positive outcomes, we had students hired following the work experiences, obviously confidence boost for students that maybe did not think that they could be successful in something like a work experience. Businesses were excited and gained confidence in their own ability to, just create a welcoming, supportive environment for someone with a disability. Students demonstrated initiative, had motivation, gain new interests in some cases, were able to use natural supports, and also increase their social skills. Had a lot of examples of individuals that kind of came in a little shy or hesitant, and then by the end of it, they're high-fiving their coworkers and just having a lot of fun. So that's what it's all about. We have lots of positive feedback from parents, and in some cases, students even modify their academic plans following the summer work experience to try to align their transition planning with this interest that they have in this employment. So now we come to, we are very thankful to have folks that experienced some success this last summer with the work experience program. And so I am going to introduce Brattina Gaskins, who is from our DARS Norfolk, Virginia Beach field office and is a VR counselor, and Billy Kraus, I hope I'm saying that right, Billy, who is from the Choice Group and is a skills trainer, job coach, who supported a couple of individuals in work experiences this last summer. So Billy and Brattina, are y'all?
Yep, we're ready to go. Thank you,
Awesome.
Martin.
Thank you.
So thank you for having me, Martin, and hello to everyone, all of our partners and DARs and all of that. And so today, I just wanted to share with you some of my experiences over last spring and summer of some students that I identify with. And you can go ahead and switch the screen for me, Martin. So I partner really, really early. So this is the time of year that I start identifying the students that are interested in possibly working or doing having a job during the summer. I identify them between this month and April to kind of get them started. And so I want to talk about student A. When I meet a lot of my students, I love to use Pathful, or what we used to know as virtual job shadow, to do career clusters. And I had student A who wanted to actually be an actor, and I'm sure some of you job coaches and counselors can understand that some of our students have some really high ambitions, and so he wanted to be an actor. I did not know how that translated to work here in the Virginia Beach, Norfolk area. And so I had a really good job coach through the Choice Group named Billy, and I reached out to him in the spring of 2022, and he was actually able to provide some work-based learning out in the community to kind of figure out what this student really was interested in. And so he located a really great spot for family fun experience. And Billy, I'm going to have you take it over from here to talk about that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And first I want to give a shout out to Brattina just for the way that she partnered with us, and the connection that we've had from the beginning has been very communicative, which was helpful, especially in these work experiences, to be able to set things up. So like first and foremost, having that connection between DARS and the vendor was really beneficial in this case. So we picked up student A, and with the insight that Brattina gave me, that we were looking for some sort of day job, because every aspiring actor needs some sort of day job to get them through. So we began going out into the community looking for learning experiences in different areas. We tried bookstores, grocery stores, and what I found was there was nothing really grabbing his attention, and so he was having a very hard time focusing. Based on his disability and a couple different factors, like he just was not able to keep his attention in any of the places that we tried. So we came back together and started talking more about his goals and dreams of being an actor, and I started looking into smaller theaters. We're in Martinsville, Virginia Beach in the summer, so there was a lot of like small theaters that were doing things. There's a lot of creative things down at the ocean side of things, and we found Family Fun Experience and tried a work-based learning experience there. The owners of the of Family Fun Experience really loved having him, and they insisted on paying him for his work that day, and they ended up inviting him back. So talking with the student and his mother, and then going back to Bettina, we discussed developing it into an intensive work experience. So we set up an 8-week experience there. He began working. We got some pictures on the next slide, Martin, if you want to switch it over. He began working there. He loved it. They loved having him. He was doing ushering, concessions in between. He even got opportunities to be on the stage during some of their shows, which just like really opened him up socially and everything. So he was having a lot of fun there. And by the end of it, he actually was, so he's still working there part-time, and then Bertina's working with him. He's in a program now, right?
That's correct. So he is still working at Family Fun Experience. So he's enjoying the passions that he actually has for being an actor, and he's open in VR. And so we're actually working on some long-term career goals now. So he's doing very well, being able to maintain his passions and looking towards a job as well. So our next slide, we want to talk about our student B. Student B was really interesting because when I first met him, he was a referral from one of my schools, and he immediately told me exactly what he wanted to do. I still used the career cluster with virtual job shadow. It still identified that his main interest was he wanted to work with food. He would cook at home, and he talked about his mom's cooking that wasn't very good. And how he would have to season her food. And so I really had a really good plan for Billy. We wanted to work with food. He was really interested in a lot of Asian cuisines. And so once again, early prior preparation for the job coach and the vendor, I reached out early spring so that we can start developing something for the summer. And so Billy took it over from there and found something at Teriyaki Madness. And so go ahead, Billy.
Yeah. So again, just communicating with us early gave me some opportunity to start looking and developing some things. And we found Teriyaki Madness pretty quickly after taking the student on. So we came in, it was a paid work experience with the expectation that he'd be there for 8 weeks. The students had some struggles socially, just opening up, asking for help in different needs, but he really had a strong work ethic from the beginning. So he jumped in and started taking on food prep in the back. And again, it developed so well that the store manager decided to keep him on, and he's still currently working there now as well. So that was another cool experience, and we got some pictures of that one as well. So he, by the end of it, this one was really cool. There was actually some communication after the work experience period was over. His mom had reached out to me and sent a message, and I think we have the message on the next one. First, they communicated with you, right, Bettina?
Yes, they did. Mom was extremely pleased and wanted to find someone indoors that she could tell how excited she was about this experience, how she's actually seen changes in her son. And Billy shared with me the employer's response back in November, where he was equating how he could not tell the difference between this teenager and an adult that student B was actually working with, because they were really having a really good time with communicating, and he stepped up. He takes directions very well. I spoke to student B recently. He's still a student in high school. He's still working there. He loves his job. And this has been a very good experience for him across the board. What my takeaway from this experience is, for one, you have to have a really good partner. And so Billy has been an awesome partner from the beginning. I'm glad he's with me. However, I hate to share him because too many people know about him now. But he's really helped me develop a lot of my students, and he's extremely busy with other counselors right now. But this has been such a positive way to implement work-based learning into possible work experience, and so that our students have a really good jump at what their careers would look like. So I thank you for the partnership. It's been very positive for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just add that communication and that partnership, having that strong partnership really was the key to coming in with a plan and being able to execute that plan.
Well, thank you for having us today.
Thank you.
This is Martin again. And so thank you so much, Bertina and Billy, for sharing about those wonderful success stories and how you're able to create some tailored work experiences for your participants. I see in the chat a lot of people are saying that's awesome, and it is. And I think we have another example of some great partnership and collaboration and communication for a work experience, and this time kind of featuring our counselor from Martinsville, Genevieve Cooley, and job coach from Hargraves, Hassan Davis. I hope I'm saying your name right, Hassan. Are y'all both there and technology working for us today?
Yes.
Yes. Good morning.
Wonderful. Well, if you're ready, I'm going to go off camera and I will advance the slides. Just let me know when you're ready.
We're ready. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Meet our student. We're going to call him A this morning. A is a rising senior over the summer. He is interested in IT. He is eager to gain work experience and excited to earn some money. Martin, if you'll go forward, please. So our employer is the TAD Space in Martinsville, Virginia. TAD Space provides a premium environment to suit any type of business needs. They are committed to providing the highest level of service and a place to provide community relationships and event space logistics. Hassan, do you want to add anything to the TAD Space employer?
Yeah, we're mixed use facility. Here we do events, and we also do co-work. It's a co-working space as well. We podcast, recording studio, is the other few things that we have going on here at the TAD Space.
Thank you. Martin, thank you. So the first week, TAD team was extremely busy preparing for a 3-day event rental. A jumped right in and was assisting immediately. He assisted his team with the IT setup and breakdown and staging of the 3-day event. He continued to play a vital role executing events and IT setup with his team members. He had a chance to work with several small businesses in Martinsville. He tagged along with their marketing team to meet new businesses, as well as meeting potential clients and maintaining relationships with their old clients. Next slide, Martin. A greeted guests as they entered the TAD space. He answered questions and directed guests to the proper departments. He was responsible for checking all IT, Wi-Fi, and audio equipment with each shift. He assisted marketing team with meeting potential clients in the community, provided clients with information about the workspace. He used work appropriate grammar when communicating with colleagues and guests, and I think this actually improved as he continued on with the work experience. And he challenged himself to speak to new and existing clients, which was huge because I think in the beginning he was very timid and shy. Hassan, do you want to add to what all A did?
Yeah, I think this experience, he gained definitely a lot of confidence. It was a confidence booster. I know when we would go around out in the community and people started noticing, he told us one day, he was like, man, he felt like he was a celebrity where people actually, they'd see him out and know his name or whatnot. So seeing him build relationships and have that social interaction, that was amazing. He also did a lot of volunteer work with us on days that he wasn't on the clock. So different organizations that we partner with, for example, Piedmont Arts and Fahey Museum, As in one of those pictures you've seen him with a poster. He went around and posted up posters for upcoming events in the community. Also with Boys and Girls Club, he did some volunteer work, helping them with their duck race fundraiser, which he enjoyed that, going around. He also here off the clock, he did classes that we would have here at TAD. For instance, we had a hip hop step class, which it was me and him and the rest was female. So he enjoyed, it helped with his confidence with that too, trying something that he probably wouldn't usually try unless someone, was there to kind of push him and get him to get involved. He also brought in high school kids that he went to school with that he would see walking through uptown Martinsville that may have been going to the game room or whatnot. He would bring them in and get them tours of the facility. Another thing that he had interest in acting and filming, and animation. So I introduced him to Natalie Hodge, she's the CEO of Rudy's Girl Media, and he got to actually work on some projects with her on his days off. I just let him know of things that was going on, and he would come in and volunteer. He got to be on set of filming Hometown Hustle, which we showcase small businesses throughout rural Virginia. So he got to see all of that, on camera, behind the camera. And I thought that was cool because, he was thinking that stuff only happens in larger markets as far as, like a New York or California. So being able to see that in the Martinsville area and right here in his own community, I thought that was a major thing for him to see as well. He got his license while he was with us, which was cool to see him, starting to gravitate into getting some independency as far as making some money and getting his driver's license to be able to drive to work every day. That was pretty cool. And I also saw him after, well, we stay in touch. So when we would have downtime, if we had, we would always walk, and I'm big on exercise and just getting him moving, getting his wheels turning. And so afterwards it rolled over. So I seen him uptown and he was selling yearbook ads for his school. So he came to us. Of course, we bought an ad, but he went to different other small businesses that we had introduced him to the owners, and he went to them, and got them to purchase ads for the yearbook as well. So yeah, that's a little bit of in a nutshell.
Thank you, Hassan. So A's
You're welcome.
strengths per the TAD Space Management, A was an asset this summer. He was dressed professionally and arrived to work on time, which we know is huge. He followed directions and paid close attention to detail. He did not hesitate to help team members or guests and had a positive attitude and was eager to learn. Next slide, please. I seen A at school last week, and I just talked to him about his work experience, and he said that he had a great time with Hassan and the team. He learned a lot. He really enjoyed it. He actually had his screensaver on his phone, this picture with him in front of the plane. He had been talking to all of the other students and his teachers about his work experience, which generated a lot of referrals for us. So he was definitely marketing for DARS as well. So he really enjoyed it. It was a great work experience, and we look forward to working with Hassan more. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah.
No, thank you both so much for sharing. And Hassan, I really like all that you shared about just how many other opportunities and experiences kind of sprang up as a result of doing this work experience for this young man. Sounds like he's got a bright future ahead of himself in this kind of work. So thank you both for sharing, and it's a really interesting work experience. I might have to go down there. I didn't think something like that existed in Martinsville. It's good to know.
Yes,
But
thank you.
hope y'all have.
He also got to. He also the picture with him in the suit, we had a gala here for the Barrow Center. So it's a school slash center that just opened, and they focus on kids with special needs and disabilities. So he got to be at the gala, and so he was excited to be at that, and he got to put on his suit, and he felt you just seen him, his confidence build even more, just coming in to be able to dress and put on a suit. So that was cool as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, so many meaningful opportunities for him. Well, I thank you both so much for sharing, and hope everybody, I think everybody appreciated y'all sharing as well, and learning from that. So I'm going to move on now to talking a little bit more specifically about some of the resources and actually how we start arranging and coordinating these work experiences. So you heard a little bit from these success stories and examples of some of the coordination that went into the work experiences. I'm going to reference a lot of resources and materials for the Summer Work Experience program, and just want you all to know that if I reference something, you can probably find it on the Employment Services and Special Programs website under a section there for Pre-ETS Summer Work Experience resources. So when you get this this PowerPoint afterwards, you'll have access to all those materials, and I'm going to add the PowerPoint and recording there, so you can locate this again if you want to go back and rewatch this or access the PowerPoint. So when it comes to marketing our summer work experiences, we have a few tools and resources here to support you in those efforts. So we have our Pre-ETS Work Experience student and business outreach flyers, which are fillable PDF forms that you can put your contact information on. And these are materials that explain, what the work experience program is, and who it's for. And the hope is that these can go out to either students and families or partners, but also businesses who might be interested in supporting a work experience over the summer. So these are things that this form can be used by DAR's staff. It can be used by vendors, and I would like to pull it up on my screen, and I'm going to try to do that successfully just to show everyone what it kind of looks like, just to have that visual. So this is our student flyer. You can see again at the bottom, you can input your name. And then the business flyer, same thing, you can put your name down at the bottom so that when you send it out, people know who they can get in touch with. And again, these are resources that you'll find on that webpage that I mentioned before. Another resource that we developed just to help with getting information out to students and parents specifically, if you wanted to have information sessions and didn't want to create your own PowerPoint or presentation from scratch, you can go on that website and use the Pre-ETS Work Experiences overview template. It's a PowerPoint that has at least some basic information about the work experiences and that program, and again, can be found on that website. And so this is more maybe for like DAR staff who are getting the word out to students and families. But these information sessions could be done in collaboration with vendors who are actually going to be supporting them. So you have everyone in one place. And you're welcome to add information or change that template. It's a template, so it's just kind of a starting point. But it may not have information that you want to put out there, or things you want to share with folks who are considering this. So that's on there. I'm not going to show that here, but those are a couple of marketing strategies and approaches. And then when it comes to coordinating work experiences, these can be coordinated, like I said before, DAR staff could find these opportunities, and oftentimes they do. So they find the business or employer and then refer, if somebody needs a skills trainer or job coach support, then they will refer to a vendor at that point. But sometimes it's our pre-ETS vendors who we're referring to and asking to find these opportunities for individuals based on their interests, like in the case of Billy and Bettina and the students that they were working on. They work together to find that opportunity. So sometimes we might have the student referred first and then be asking to help find an opportunity for that student, or we might have the opportunity already and then we're finding students to fill that opportunity. So kind of front end and back end approach is what I called it, but maybe there's other terms that we can use for that. And then as far as referral processes, counselors might refer students to either a vendor or our DARS business development or placement staff, depending on their level of support needs or kind of what you're asking for. But those referrals should, as a best practice, come along with our Pre-ETS Work Experience student information form. This is a document, again, you can find on our website, and is a fillable Word document that, as I'm pulling up on the screen here, it just captures some basic information about the student. It also includes information about their interests, their availability, their support needs, if there's anything specific, their transportation plan, which is really important, like we mentioned earlier. And so this is, our vendors really appreciate, especially when a student is referred along with that information. So please, if you are able to complete that form or have your students work to complete that form with their family, or however we get it done, it's just helpful to have that in hand as we're asking vendors to work with our clients. We might also want to share the IEP or other education records, depending on, if you think that's needed. It's definitely not necessary, but we can. And that exchange of information is covered through our Pre-ETS information consent and release form, which our students sign in order to begin receiving Pre-ETS. But if you don't have that form signed, you'll need to get a what we call our RS3I or other form to exchange those records and information with a vendor. Best practice is to hold a team meeting prior to the work experience so that we can review expectations with the student family before that we get started. And that'll make sure that they're not planning a vacation in the middle of the work experience that we have worked so hard to line up and all that stuff. So I already shared about the work experience student information form, but this is just a summary of what that document is for. So we have one last presenter before we take a 5-minute break. And so one way that, as we're talking about marketing and getting started early for the summer work experience program, really love this idea that I heard of from our Manassas field office and our vendor out there, Did Lake, who partnered together with Prince William County Parks and Recreation to have a hiring event where students, DAR staff, and the vendor were all together in one place and really accomplished a lot of different things all at once. So a lot of times sometimes we work harder, not smarter. And this was really an example to me of working smarter. And so we have today with us Dina Halenka, who is a counselor from our Manassas field office, and Stacy Chapman, who is from Did Lake, and wonderful people. And Dina and Stacy, are y'all there? And is your technology working today?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, y'all are here. Great. I can't see anyone right now on my screen, so thank you. So if y'all are all set, just let me know when well, actually, this is the only slide, so I don't need to advance any slides. y'all are all good to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martin. Hello, everyone. This is Stacy Chapman from Didlake. Dina and I wanted to share our experiences with a really collaborative hiring event that we would do for Summer Work Experience. So Didlake and Manassas Stars, we've had a really long-standing relationship with Prince William County Parks and Recreation. It kind of started on a smaller scale back in 2017 when they hired 6 students to work at Splashdown Water Park. The jobs there that our students are hired for are, park attendants, as you can see, lots of smiling faces standing at the top of water slides, so aquatic attendants, concessions, cooks, and cashiers. So this partnership, again, it's longstanding. And throughout the years, it's grown exponentially. So the past few years, Prince William County Parks and Rec, they hire anywhere from 20 to 25 students. And it's not only just at Splashdown Water Park now, but there's another water park in the county that we also partner with. So because of the growth, we really had to get creative of how we're going to, how we could get as many students connected with this work experience opportunity. But again, as Martin said, to work smarter, not harder. So I'm going to pass it over to Dina, who could talk a little bit more about our hiring event.
Yes. So good morning, everybody. So as Stacy said, this started in 2017. So really, we've worked this partnership for it's been 4 years. 2020 was a gap year, thanks to COVID. The water parks didn't open in 2020, so it's really only been 4 years. But the last 2 summers, the water parks, Splashdown is the larger park in Manassas. And then there's Water Works, which is a slightly smaller water park, but it's on the other end of the county on the Woodbridge side. So they've hired between 20 and 25 DARS clients in a combination of those different positions that Stacy has mentioned. So we have worked to set up some DARS specific hiring events in preparation to get our students on board. So the water parks have been great. They have developed their own DARS specific hiring flyers for us, and we have held these events. Typically, they are at our DARS office in the evening. There have been a couple years where we have actually held 2 different hiring events, one on each end of the county because Prince William is so large. We have had a Manassas side and one on the Woodbridge side to target the students on that end of the county. But prior to that event, we really promote the jobs by sharing them with our schools, with the transition staff. Of course, sharing them with all the counselors that cover Prince William County, with students and parents of anyone who might be interested in pursuing those summer jobs. They start advertising those jobs early. So now is actually the time that they start the hiring process for the summer jobs as the water parks open. Memorial Day, but they do start their trainings usually in April. So, we like to start recruiting students very early. So that kind of collaborative hiring event that we hold, like I said, it's typically in the evening just to accommodate parents' work schedules, students' school schedules, and to make sure that everyone has access to get to the office. It's kind of a all hands on deck approach. So we have included our placement team comes. Last year, our manager was there. Tiffany Jenkins stayed. and helped. Of course, the vendor is there, and myself, and sometimes we have additional DARS counselors there as well. So, I kind of, we refer to it almost like a guided hiring process. So students can come in, we'll have them meet with someone from the placement team or with the DARS staff in one office or in the placement team's office, and they'll get a chance to do some interview practice. They'll go from their interview practice into the conference room where they'll actually do their interview with someone from Prince William County Parks and Rec. We kind of had a little system set up. We'll get like a thumbs up from someone who is doing their interview. After that thumbs up, the applicant or the student then moves to meet with someone from the ESO, so from Did Lake. And at that point, they were able to complete their intake right there on the spot and sign all the forms and everything that's needed for Did Lake to get the process started. And that was really helpful because typically the parent was there because they were providing the transportation to the student to the hiring event. And then sometimes a student would have completed the job application in advance of the hiring event, but at times they might not have. So if they needed to go online and complete the application after their interview, then they could also do that while they were at DARS. They would use our employment resource room, and we could provide assistance with them to complete their online application. Other times, they may have completed their online application for, a park attendant position, but then while they were interviewing, maybe the interviewers thought they might be a good fit for an aquatics attendant. And so maybe they were hired as an aquatics attendant and they needed to go in and edit their online job application. So we would be able to do all of that kind of in one sitting and get everything completed in that one night so that Parks and Rec could move forward, process their application, and send them a job offer via email, within the next day or so. So that was kind of, we found that this was really successful in getting a lot of our students hired. It was helpful to Did Lake because they were able to kind of explain the process. It could be kind of confusing to parents. And understanding, how Did Lake, is how DARS is collaborating with Did Lake, who's going to provide the on-site support. So it was nice that we just kind of had this flow of services and everything could be taken care of there, like a one-stop shop almost. Of course, students could always also be hired after the fact. So, we always had some stragglers who would come in and complete applications after the hiring event. But I would say, and Stacy, you could jump in, but I think the majority of our students who did the summer work experience at Splashdown or Water Park or Waterworks were hired at our hiring event in the office. And then, following that hiring event, and once all the positions were filled and we were done with the hiring, Did Lake would then kind of coordinate. We would have DARS specific onboarding events. Splashdown and Waterworks were great about offering those, I think, because we had so many students, 20 to 25. They would offer DARS specific onboarding opportunities so that parents could also attend if it was applicable. So learning things like how to utilize, they use an app for scheduling. It was called When to Work. So that students could put in their scheduling availability, or that was how they would request time off. So the skills trainer was available to attend those trainings with all of the DARS clients. And then any, new employee orientation and trainings that were required depending on the positions that students were working. So they all had customer service trainings they had to attend. Some had like bloodborne pathogen training or and those types of things. So did a great job, and they would work out actually a schedule, a skills trainer schedule for the summer to support the students at the water park. So the skills trainers got the same splashdown uniforms. They got to go out in their tank tops and their skirts and shorts and support the students all summer at the water park and work on their tan. Starting, of course, just like traditional supported employment, there might be multiple skills trainers at the water park during the what they call a soft opening, which is before Memorial Day. And then, during the initial phase of training and when the park first opened, and then throughout the summer, they fade and they reduce their hours of support or the number of skills trainers that are available on site and kind of wandering through the park, providing support to our various students and employees working there. Stacy, do you have anything to add? Did I miss anything?
No, I think, the only thing to highlight, that I would want to highlight with that this wasn't something that happened overnight. We started on a much smaller scale and really cultivated that relationship with Prince William County Parks and Rec. And a lot of these students, they've actually, splashed down in waterworks. They're seasonal positions, but some of our older students who then graduated maybe the following year, they were already in kind of the Parks and Rec system. So several of these students went on to work at different rec centers or gyms within Prince William County Parks and Rec for long-term permanent employment. So definitely very grateful for our wonderful partnership with Prince William County Parks and Recs. It's just been a really great experience.
And a lot of the students came back and were rehired for multiple summers. So while they might have needed DAR's support for that initial summer or for their first summer, they've come back multiple summers, during high school and may not, need that support the following summer or, their third summer. We've also had students kind of move up the ladder a little bit and take on some more leadership roles, in their different positions at the water park. And that's always nice to see too. So. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, thank you both so much for sharing. And I think that this is really like a great example of what we could do. And in this case, it is the employer is actually hiring the individuals, like you said, on a seasonal basis. But this type of event could be replicated and almost like a mock hiring event for the work experiences. If you had a employer who was on board and had, multiple positions or opportunities for students, and you could partner with your vendors in this kind of way to do that interview prep, and then actually kind of have them practice interviewing with the employer. So I just love the idea, and just hope that others take some inspiration from this. And I know, Stacy, we were talking the other day about there's another Parks and Rec department in a neighboring county that is has learned about this and is very interested in doing this as well. So it's something that's spreading and might be a possibility for others where they live. So thank you so much for sharing about this. I am abruptly moving on to our 5-minute break for everyone because
Martin,
it's been, oh, yeah.
Martin, before you go, can we we have one question. Did each student at the same park have their own or shared job coach? That was the question. I didn't
Oh,
know
okay.
Stacy, or could you answer that?
Yeah, so obviously with that number of students, when we're supporting 20 to 25, it was an all hands on deck. So what we did is we had all of our supported employment staff, we created a calendar for each of them. So we almost had somebody there, especially in the beginning, almost every single day. What we did to kind of help fill the gaps is that, you know, when we were having those, when the students were having their orientation to the park and all of the trainings, all of the DIDLIC staff would go to that training. So they would be familiar, the students would be familiar with different faces they might see. And then we got creative, and they have a little tiki hut where the lifeguards were. And we, what I ended up doing was taking pictures of each student and putting like a short bio in there. And then we had a place in the back of the book for notes that we could scribble down, you know, if a skills trainer was there on Monday and student A was, you know, having some struggles, then whatever skills trainer was there the following day would be able to look in the book and kind of see what happened. Just a quick note from the previous shift. I think, you know, it ended up being, we rotated in probably, gosh, 5 or 6 skills trainers that kind of split the summer up, because the park is open 7 days a week, you know, 10 hours a day, holidays. So that would have been really difficult for just one skills trainer to tackle.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation. And I'm sure y'all are probably open if folks want to reach out and ask more questions and, you know, plan something similarly. Y'all are both very helpful in my experience. So if you want to drop your contact information for folks, if they do want to follow up, that would be really awesome. But folks, take your 5-minute break now, because at 11:23 on the nose, I'm going to get started again, and we're going to move into authorizing and reporting for these services. So go ahead, take your break, and be back at 11:23. All right, folks. So it is 11:23. Like I said, on the nose. Gotta move on. Yes,
Martin,
Matt.
can I ask you to clarify something for everyone so I didn't confuse them? People were asking about the one time a year. You know, when we originally mentioned that a couple of years ago, we wanted students to spread, you know, the funds to be spread out for everyone to participate in a paid work experience.
Matt, can we
Yeah.
hold it until after? If
Yeah,
people have
just,
questions about that, it's just the time is tight
yes,
and
go ahead.
I'm
Go ahead.
gonna
I just
need to
wanted to make
proceed.
sure, you're aware of what I said. That's all. Thanks.
I saw it in the chat, and so
Okay.
I think we can clarify that if people have questions about that. I just want to make sure that we get through the information today. But
Go ahead.
so we're going to be talking now about authorizing, invoicing, and reporting requirements for the summer work experiences. So this is information that's important, very critical for just making sure that our vendors are paid appropriately for the services and that we're tracking and reporting these services properly. So I wish this was simpler, but I just wanted to offer an explanation of why, you know, we do have multiple service procedure codes for these services. So just explaining what a service procedure code is, you'll see on the screen there that we have basically 4 different codes, well, actually 5 different codes that we use for summer work experiences, and different services that might be offered through this program. You can see that we have a work experience coordination code, which I'll explain later is for coordination activities to support the work experience. Then we have 3 different codes for the skills trainer supports themselves, depending on if it is an individual work experience, meaning one person in the work experience. If it's a group experience that is a half day, which means 3 or fewer hours per day. And if it's a group experience that's full day, that's another code. It's over 3 hours. And then we have the work experience payment reimbursement code, which is WE wage. And that's another code that we use when it's a paid work experience that is paid by the vendor to the student. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Each of these codes is really important because what these codes do is they tell the story of what our students are participating in and the services that they're receiving. And it also tells RSA, which is the federal government that provides us money every year for our program, it tells them more about what's going on with our students. And from a program perspective, it helps me to know and track what students are doing so that we can make improvements from year to year, and so that we can also, give recognition of the hard work that everyone's doing. If we had one code for everything, it would make things simpler, but it would be difficult to discern what is coordination and what is an actual work experience that a student has participated in. So it is really important that we have this granular data that we get from these codes and that we're authorizing things correctly. So I can't make this simpler, but I can try to provide supports and resources and information to everybody like we are in this training, as well as what you're seeing on the screen. This work experience authorization worksheet is a spreadsheet that you can find on that website that I shared earlier. And this spreadsheet, which I'll pull up in a second, is to help with, just understanding what you need to get authorizations for if you're a provider that's providing any of these services. These services, just like supported employment or any other service, our vendors need a pre-authorization before they start providing the services. And that authorization, it can be, it needs to go to the counselor. The counselor needs to be asked for the authorization for each student in the work experience, and they have to approve it one way or another. So if that's an email, if that's a phone call, verbal authorization, and then we have to generate an authorization and send that to the vendor for the services. So that's the first step, is making sure that we're doing these authorizations correctly. And so I just want to share really quickly what that authorization worksheet looks like, because I think this is really going to be a helpful tool, I hope, for our vendors, but also our staff, just to know what authorizations to expect and everything. So you don't have to use this, but again, it's just a tool or resource to help make this complex kind of thing a little bit simpler for you. So on each of these tabs in this spreadsheet, you'll see a different service within the working experience program. This tab is the coordination. There's individual and group work experiences, so we have that separated. Because for the group work experience, the coordination hours are going to need to be distributed equally among the participants in that group, whereas an individual work experience, all that coordination is for that one individual. So that's why those are separated out. Then on the second tab, you'll see the skills training supports and the service codes for those. So you calculate these, you enter your hours in here, and it tells you the authorization code and how many hours to request from your counselor. So down here on the groups, you're also going to see or get an authorization amount that you need to request. So if you have 4 kids, say they're working 10 days in the month, because again, it's a daily type of authorization, then Actually, I'm seeing that's incorrect. So I'm going to fix this before and fix it on our website. But that's the basic idea of this tool, is to help you so that you have know what you need to authorize. And then if you're doing work experience reimbursement for payments, then this tab right here is going to help you there. So that's the tool. I'm not going to go into that because I have the PowerPoint that we're going to go over each of those separately. But just know that that tool is there to help you with your authorizations. So another tool or template is our RFA, which stands for Request for Authorizations. And this is a Microsoft Word document that you can find again on the webpage, that when you're requesting an RFA or an authorization for multiple clients, it can especially make it a little bit easier to have everything all in one place. And I'm looking right now for the document so I can pull it up. Okay, so this is the RFA form for the work experiences. And you'll see at the top, you put your vendor information. You're going to, down in section 2, put the students' names. We have a participant ID number for each person, which is 6 digits. And then you choose the code that you're asking for an authorization for that individual. So if you're doing coordination and you're asking for 6 hours, you'd fill it in like this. And then you would explain, this is for intake and hours to find a work experience. So you would put in there just an explanation of why you're requesting that. And then once the work experience starts, you might actually be requesting those skills trainer support hours. So if you need 20 hours that month, then you'd fill that in and explain it like that. And this gets sent to the DARS counselor, but also to that field office's fiscal technician who does the authorizations. And I can't tell you for your specific situation who that is, but you'll have to find out who does the authorizations and make sure they're on that email as well. So these should be sent monthly in advance of the month and the services that are going to be provided to the individuals. And I would separate them by counselor so that you're sending one to each different counselor if you have multiple counselors with different students, and make sure that those are sent to them separately. And then once you have that, any approval from the counselor, email or verbal, you're good to go. But they should also at some point send you the actual authorization document. So I'm going to move on to talking about the different service codes and activities. Like I said before, WE Coord is one of the service procedure codes that we use for work experience coordination activities. So this was a code that we developed last year, and we made it for a couple of reasons. The first thing is that for group work experiences, we didn't really have a good way to reimburse for coordination activities and skills trainer travel time to and from a work experience. So it made that service less viable. And so it was important to figure out a way to make that a service that could be done, because for some situations, it is the best service option or choice for someone. And all of our group work experiences should have 100%, on-site skills trainer supports. So that's one reason. And the other reason was, without this code, it was hard to tell what was coordination of a work experience and what was an actual work experience that a student was participating in. So from a data picture perspective, it just looked like everyone was doing a work experience, but in reality, sometimes we were doing a lot of coordination, trying to find a work experience, but it may have never actually happened. They may have never actually had a work experience. So that's why this code is important. It is an individual hourly code. So whether we're doing an individual work experience or a group work experience, this is always going to be an hourly rate, which varies by vendor. And the activities that this covers, as far as what are allowable coordination activities, it could be before the work experience to do an intake or team meeting. It could be coordinating certain activities, communications with the student and family or school. Could be finding that business that is going to host a work experience that aligns with that person's interests. Could be completing the work experience agreement, which I'll talk about as a required, which is a required document or report for summer work experiences from our vendors. Could be to cover that travel time to and from the service location. And that's just the skills trainer travel time. We cannot pay for using this code. We can't pay for transporting students or the students' transportation. So this is just talking about the skills trainer. Report writing time, and then also after the work experience, having a debrief meeting, a team meeting for debriefing the work experience and just kind of wrapping it all up. So we also have the work experience payment reimbursement code, which is WE wage. And so we allow or have some approved vendors who will actually pay students for the hours that they work in the work experience. We ask that they pay them the current state minimum wage, which right now is $12 an hour. And we reimburse at $2 an hour above minimum wage. So right now that reimbursement rate is $14 an hour. We can't reimburse for payments if it's at a business, ESO's business or a place of contracted work. We can only authorize a maximum of 120 hours per student because work experiences should be no more than 120 hours. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's basically a Department of Labor requirement or limit on the amount of time that someone can spend in an internship type of opportunity. We can do wage reimbursement for both individual and group work experiences. And again, only approved vendors of this service can do this. The wage experience or wage reimbursement report is on the Pre-ETS Work Experience Services invoice and report, which I will pull up right now so that you can kind of see that. Hold on just one second. Oh, my apologies. Did not have it locked and loaded, but I will now. Okay. So this is our invoice and report for Pre-ETS Work Experience Services. And so this is what's submitted at the end of each month. It should be sent by the 10th of the month following the month of services. So if you provide coordination and wage reimbursement in the month of June, it should be sent to your DARS counselor and the fiscal technician in that office by the 10th of July. So again, you're getting pre-authorization and you're billing, invoicing and reporting after the month, by the 10th of the month after. So this report, the work experience invoice and report, is for all of those codes. So if it's an individual work experience and you're doing skills training, you have some coordination, that travel time and everything to get there. And say you're also doing wage reimbursement, those are all covered on this invoice and report template. This is a template, so it's not required that you use this, but the information on here is all required. So you might have that formatted as a vendor differently, but what's important really is just the information that gets to the counselor each month. So it does have a report section where you're filling out some information, and for the wage reimbursement, there is a timesheet that we require to be submitted. It has to be filled out by the student, signed by the skills trainer and the student, and submitted for reimbursement of that particular service. So I'm not going to go through that with fine tooth comb right now, but you can find that resource on the Employment Services and Special Programs webpage. So again, the 120-hour limit that you'll hear about, so our work experiences are 3 to 8 weeks, no more than 120 hours for that student's actual time spent in the work experience working. That comes from Department of Labor and some of their requirements around, what constitutes a trainee or trainer relationship and what is an employer-employee relationship. So these are, in a lot of cases, students who are unpaid or, basically just getting some training. So we don't want to confuse or make it seem like they are an employee of the business unless the business actually does hire them, in which case they're an employee. So that's why we keep to the 120 hours. It's also a big reason why we complete the work experience agreements and require those, because that document, when we look at that, establishes that this individual is having an educational or training experience and is not an employee. So the work experience agreement, which again, you can find on that webpage with the resources, is a document that's supposed to be completed before the start of the work experience, something that should be reviewed ideally with the student, the family, the employer. And it's a document that includes each person's role and responsibility. It talks about the student's work experience objectives, so their learning goals, what skills they're going to work on, what career exploration they're going to achieve from it. It also has the student's work experience schedule, and it has a skills trainer support plan in it. So what are those supports going to look like? We want our kids to be as independent as possible in these experiences. So we don't want to have 100% skills trainer supports for the individual experiences. In particular, we want them to ideally, rely on those natural supports in the business. But again, for a group work experience, that's different. We do want 100% skills trainer supports if it's a group. So if it's 2 or more in the same work experience. We heard about the water park example earlier. That's a little different because they're all kind of doing different things in the place. It's the same site, but it's not the same work experience. So in those cases, that wouldn't be a group technically. And just so you can see the work experience agreement, oh, that's not it. Let's see. Okay, so the work experience agreement, it looks like this. And contains all those things that we were talking about before. Again, this is required, and it does have a space in place for signatures down at the bottom for the student, the parent, the skills trainer, and the DARS counselor to all agree on. Okay. So when it comes to skills trainer supports, like we talked about, that support plan is in that work experience agreement. These could be both on and off-site activities during the work experience. Could be helping them adjust to the work experience environment, teaching them their duties and soft skills on the job site. Could be natural support development and maintenance, so helping them to make those connections and keep them. Accommodation supports if they need to request accommodations. Work experience is a great opportunity for kids to have some reinforcement and practice with skills that they've learned in advance of the work experience. So, that includes like practicing requesting accommodations. It can include contacting and consulting with the worksite supervisor, mentor, or the student to problem solve, and also to get feedback from the worksite supervisor about the student. And it's also to facilitate a final meeting with the supervisor and student to review the strengths and growth areas and performance. So this is just an example of like, what the support fading plan might look like for individual work experiences. It could look different per student, but you might want to just have some idea of a planned fading schedule that could look something like this. So when it comes to authorizing individual work experiences, meaning just one person and one work experience, we use the S11001 WE service procedure code, which is an individual hourly rate. So it's an hourly rate. Students can't work any more than 8 weeks or 120 hours. So we typically don't expect this to be more than a total of 120 hours across the entire work experience. But if it's 100% supports that an individual needs, then it's possible you could have more than 120 hours, but typically that's not the case. And so we do have, and this is something you'll find in the authorization worksheet. This just kind of summarizes when you can and cannot authorize this code. So you'll see on here that there's the individual work experience code is there, the second one down below the WE coordination code. So before a work experience starts, the only thing that can be authorized is the work experience coordination code. We can't authorize any wage reimbursement or skills trainer supports because the work experience has not started. We also have some soft limits around how many hours can be requested, but you can always get an approval or exception, as is noted there. The 14 hours of coordination before the work experience, you can get a field office manager's approval to do more. So I know that's one of the things I get complaints about a lot, but you can get an exception or approval. Then during the work experience, we might be authorizing all three. So we might have skills trainer supports, that S11 code. We might have coordination activities, so travel time for the skills trainer. And we might have wage reimbursement happening, so that's another service code. So you might have all three during the work experience, but once that experience ends, the only thing we might authorize is coordination for a debrief meeting to happen after that work experience. So I have an example here. I'm not going to go through it for the sake of time, but just you can reference this when we post the PowerPoint if you need an example. But for the sake of time, because we are going to run out, I'm going to kind of zip through this and just tried to show an example that highlights that, well, first of all, the main thing to take away from that example is going to be that you might authorize or get an authorization for 20 hours of skills trainer supports, but we can only pay for what a student actually participates in. So if they only show up for 10 hours of work that month and there's 10 hours of skills training, that's what we would invoice and pay for. So that's probably the key point there. Now, authorizing group work experiences, again, a group is 2 or more students in the same experience. We have a full day rate, which is 3 or more hours a day, and then a half day rate is 3 or fewer. And those are different codes. And these are a daily rate as opposed to a hourly rate. So, so your number of units that you request, if they're working 120 hours, if it was an individual experience, you'd be requesting 120 skills trainer units. But if it's a group experience, you need to look at how many days are they working. So that is the amount of units that you'll request an authorization for. So if they're working 10 days in the month, if it's half day or full day, you're going to request 10 units of whichever is the right amount of hours that they're working each day. But again, the skills trainer should be there 100% of the time. So however many days they're working should be the number of days or the number of units that we're authorizing for each student. So this is just like before, just to show that before the work experience, we are only authorizing work experience coordination. And the thing here with groups is, like I said earlier, if you need 16 hours of coordination time, that travel and meeting time for the entire group, and you have 4 kids in the group, then you need to divide that total amount of time that you need by each individual instead of multiplying. So we're not going to multiply the 16 hours by 4 participants. We're going to divide, and that's going to bring you to more like 4 hours. Then during the work experience, we're going to authorize coordination potentially. We're going to authorize the skills training supports, and we're going to authorize wage reimbursement if they're being paid for that experience. So the 120 hours there is a maximum, and that one is an hourly authorization as opposed to daily, because we're actually looking at the amount of hours that they worked and were paid minimum wage. And then after the work experience, only 4 hours for coordination per participant to do a debrief type of meeting. And again, we got an example here. I apologize that we're a little tight on time, so I'm going to have to advance through that, but you can reference that example in the PowerPoint when we post that on the webpage. So the work experience services invoice and report I showed you already. So I don't need to stop here and show you that report again, but that is what you're going to use for invoicing and billing us for all those work experience activities. We also have a required pre and post survey. It's a pre-ETS survey that should be completed before and after any pre-ETS activity. And I can show you that really quick just on the screen here. This is also on the website. So the student would complete this. Sometimes people need to sit down with the student and go through these items, but this is another thing that we require along with the services. So additional service considerations, and I'm going to move along again kind of quickly, but these are just some other things that we need to consider along with those supports for the work experience. So first of all, students who receive Social Security disability benefits and participate in a paid work experience, they need to understand that that is income, and but they also need to understand that they can qualify for that income to be excluded and not impact their benefits through what we call the student earned income exclusion. So there's a pretty high threshold for how much money they can qualify for this exclusion. So I don't think we're probably going to have any students that exceed that amount. But they need to follow the steps on the next slide for reporting that income, getting that exclusion arranged with their local Social Security office. And we also have a WISA service that's here on the screen. So if they are an eligible VR client, we could also refer them, if you're a counselor, for this WISA service. And the procedure code for that is on the screen, A3009. So a qualified provider could support them with kind of requesting this exclusion. They need to request the exclusion in advance of the work experience, but there's been cases where we've had to request it like after it's already started, and that's fine. They can retroactively apply it, but it's best to do it as early as possible. So they can submit request either by writing a letter, and we do have a template of a letter on our website in those resources, or they can fill out a Social Security statement of claimant form and just stating that they're requesting this exception. They need some documentation that verifies their enrollment in school, because again, this is the student earned income exclusion. So that letter, that can be on letterhead from the school and just verify their schedule and enrollment. Now, I don't know if Social Security offices are open to the public. I'm hoping they are, but if not, then they can always send it by certified mail so that there's documentation that the office received it. I'm moving on quickly just because of time, but some other VR services that could benefit students possibly. And again, if they're eligible, they can receive these services. Like we said, benefits planning can help them if they have disability benefits. Rehab technology might be a relevant service to help them with maybe being more independent on the work site. And then we have what we call pre-ETS flexibilities, which I'm going to describe on the next screen. So a pre-ETS flexibility is a VR service. So it can only be provided to an eligible student who has an IPE. And what's unique about this is we can use pre-ETS funds for these services as long as an individual is needing them to participate in a pre-ETS activity. And so a couple of examples of that we've seen is, for example, maintenance is one of those VR services that if someone is an eligible student and they're participating in a work experience that requires them to have a uniform, then using this maintenance code, Pre-Flex1, we can pay for that uniform through our pre-ETS funds. And then a big one is transportation. If we need to pay for bus passes or any other kind of transportation for them to get to and from the work experience for pre-ETS, then we can use pre-ETS funding for that service using our Pre-Flex2 code. So that's something, especially for our counselors on here to keep in mind, is that these might be things that you don't have to use your VR budget for, because those VR budget dollars are a little bit tighter sometimes. So it's nice to be able to use the pre-ETS funds if we need it. So I know I ran through that pretty quickly. I do want to say that I'm available for questions and support from anybody who has questions. I did want to show just all of our districts and where our field offices are, and encourage our providers here to be in contact with your local field office and managers about your capacity, your availability to support these services this summer, and start planning and coordinating things now, like as soon as possible, so that we can be ready for a successful summer. And if you're a provider that's looking to expand your coverage or has capacity in areas where maybe you haven't taken referrals before, then we'd also like to hear from you and talk about that, because I think probably all of our offices would tell you that they need more vendors to provide these services. So again, this is a link with all the resources, also a link to our Pre-ETS and Transition Services webpage, as well as if you don't know your local DARS office, you can find it there. My contact information is here. I just want to stop now and just say thank you to everybody for attending. If you check back at the website, I'd say in a couple of days, then this PowerPoint and the recording should be on there. I'm also going to do a little update to that authorization worksheet because I saw the group calculation was a little off. So, but thank you all, and I hope this was helpful for everybody. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and stop recording